And so when we fall in love, even if you haven't done any personal development work or you know someone who has that initial feeling, it tracks as transmitters and, emotional triggers and all those things. But we're really seeing the divine in ourselves and the other person. It's a really beautiful state that everyone has access to, except we misinterpret it. And I think a lot of people misinterpret that feeling of seeing the divine presence in another person as they're separate from them, that they can't see in themselves. If they can recognize that, then they can really start to feel like I have that in me too. And then the longing goes away. But the longing is not for that person, but the longing is for our own soul, our own divinity, our own divine nature. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Soul Sessions. I am Deborah Burnt Maldonado.
And I'm Dr. Rob.
And we are the founders of Creative Mind. And we're bringing you continue our series on emotions. And today we're talking about love, because the last two episodes we talked about anger and fear, and we thought we wanted to lighten things up a bit. So we're going to have a really juicy today. And before we begin, I would encourage you, if you're listening to us on any podcast services, please subscribe. And if you're watching us on YouTube, just click the link in the corner and subscribe to our channel so you can get the whole series on emotions. So love isn't really an emotion, is it, Rob?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's more than an emotion. That's the kind of the correct answer. That it's a lot more than just an emotion. But
I've
of
heard in
course,
romantic comedies, they would say love is a verb.
love is a verb. That's
Yeah.
exactly. It includes behavioral patterns. It includes courtship patterns, romantic gestures,
The love languages.
love languages, communication, biological, psychological, spiritual elements to it. So there's a lot to unpack. But we're having a conversation around things that we've kind of learned through the years. We in our early career as coaches and coach trainers, we did a lot of work on relationships and love. So
I
now
did.
it's
Even before I met you,
matured a
I did a
little
lot
bit.
of work on relationships.
What's that?
Before I even met you, I did a lot of work on relationships.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
I did too, in a way, because I was doing couples therapies, family therapy, that kind of stuff.
I was talking about myself and reading
Your
self-help
research.
books. I was doing lots of research, lots of dating. And my first book, Let Love In, that came out in 2010, was based on my initial kind of talking about the mind and why we're attracted to certain people. Yeah. It is a little tell-all. So I was very transparent in some of my experiences. So if you want to know deeper stuff about me, it's in the book. We can put a link in the show notes for it if you're interested. It's more from my hypnotherapy days when I was just talking about conditioning and belief systems around love. But it's still a lot of people found
You're
love.
supposed to hold it up here and say,
"Oh, it's right there in the back of my bookshelf."
There it is.
There it is. So yeah. So there's different layers to love, like you said. It's complex. It's psychological. There's physical elements. There's neurological elements. And there's also spiritual elements to love. So we're going to talk about all of those today. But you are the expert in neuroscience, Rob. Let's start with the neuroscience of love.
Yeah, I wouldn't call myself an expert, but
you know more than me, so
it's been a life, or at least half of my life, obsession to understand what is the brain and how does it work. So we know in love and attraction, for example, there are neurotransmitters and hormones that play a big role in who and why we attach to certain people. So the dopamine, we know, is kind of a reward neurotransmitter. Well, guess what happens when you meet somebody new that you're interested in, or they're interested in you, they're paying attention to you. Yeah, the dopamine system kicks in and you feel euphoric and you feel rewarded and you feel great, right? And it's fun. So those dopamine networks really help us connect with strangers, because think about what happens here. A total stranger within a week or two becomes really important to you. How does nature do that?
All of a sudden, you throw everything away for this person, right?
Yeah. Yeah. In the long run, then, and this we know also from the bonding of a mother and child, when the mother and child, for example, look into each other's face, the oxytocin, which is more of a hormone, begins to be secreted in the body. And it's a bonding mechanism, bonds us to this other individual. So in the mother and child, of course, that's the one of the strongest bonds in human relationships. But it also happens in love, of course, when we stare into our beloved's eyes and they stare into ours. Oxytocin is rewiring and redesigning our system to where we're becoming attached to this individual.
And so we have these physical experiences, inside, internal experiences, feelings flowing through us, and we call it love.
Yes.
We give it a label, we give it a word that describes what we feel.
Yeah, the attachment. And then, of course, people talk about attachment styles, and this is where they come in. The particular way that you attach is more psychological, let's say. It's more what was your history with your parents, with your mother, with your father, with your siblings, and all that plays into now this new relationship, this new attachment that you have with this complete stranger. That hopefully they don't turn out to be serial murderer and all that stuff.
The
Like,
Tinder swindler.
exactly.
So then when we're so the brain doesn't act in on its own. So there's like a psychological foundation that goes with this. It's not just the brain
Yeah, that's
connecting.
right.
There's a deeper psychological element happening. But before we go there, I'd like to talk about physics, just the physical attraction.
Yeah.
And I guess from evolutionary psychology, there's certain traits that people find attractive. Like the
Genetically,
wider hips or the strong man, the tall, tall, or the symmetry of the face.
symmetry. Yeah, because all those are cues for health,
Mm.
meaning reproduction health, that you're ensuring that you're going to have healthy offspring. So to us, we think of it as sexy, but it's nature's way of telling us this is a healthy individual ready for reproduction. The hips, the hip to waist ratio. I remember when I was in grad school, people were doing those kind of studies. They would look at what's more attractive, what ratio is more attractive, hip to waist, and those kind of studies. Interesting stuff. But the color of the skin, or the overall health of the hair, the
The
individual.
teeth too, right?
Yes, all that cues. Those are cues of healthy reproduction status.
And another thing I saw, because I did lots of research on love through the years of being a love relationship coach, there was a study that they showed they had people appear in their life, like on the street or randomly, and then they would say, "Who are you most attracted to?" And they would pick people that were familiar, like they've seen before, even though it didn't register consciously. And I guess that would be more of the familiarity of like the tribe and friendliness. Like if you know someone, your guard goes down a little more and you feel connected to. So I thought that was interesting as well.
Yeah, yeah. There's been all kinds of studies, like if they do it like with T-shirts. So if people wear a T-shirt for the day, and then you sniff it.
Oh yeah, the pheromones.
Yeah. But if it's a relative, if it's a close relative or a sibling, you won't tend to be attracted to that.
That works good.
Yeah,
That's very,
exactly.
yeah.
So
It's so
nature
weird
has,
how nature does
yeah,
that.
yeah. And also it depends on the woman's kind of menstrual cycle, whether they're ready for
Mm.
reproduction or not, those kind of things. And so it's really fascinating once you understand or look into the neurobiology of sexual attraction and mate selection. One of my friends in grad school, I remember one day I found him really depressed because he was saying, so there is no love really, it's all neurochemistry. And I was telling him, no, it's a balance, right?
Mm.
Nature, of course, has its way of helping us connect to, again, because it's a stranger that we're connecting to, who just a couple of weeks ago was completely, out of our lives. Now they're going to be the center of our lives. That has to have some neurological and physiological component to it.
And what now with the dating apps, people look at just the physical and the resume, and they're like
Mhm.
choosing someone just on the physical. They have to pass that barrier first before they even make, go deeper with the psychological and all those other things. But that's interesting too, is that people, the man who finds that beautiful woman, that she's gorgeous, but she doesn't have anything in common with him, and it's like that initial attraction. He feels like he's in love, but then he, goes on a couple dates and he's like, she's just a pretty face, nothing else there. Just like this strong guy, like he could be just, nothing there. And for them, not that they don't have anything there, but it's just there's no other connection. So we can't just rely on the purely physical, even the neurotransmitters, like they
That's right.
can't just choose for us. And the deeper, more
Yeah.
interesting part is the psychological
Yeah.
part of love, and often misguided.
Yeah, but often misunderstood because it's more subtle. So
Hmm.
we know when we're attracted to somebody physically, we feel it very kind of obvious to us. There's an attraction, there's a beauty there. There's they walk into the room and the music starts to play and their hair is shiny and their eyes sparkle and it's an incredible experience. At the psychological level, though, what is happening is projection. Now, again, and when you study these things, you think, oh my God, nature is just fooling us, right? It's projection is essentially our own ideal projected onto this individual so that they appear complete to us. Like we know who they are or we understand them completely and we're connected to them somehow, even though they're complete strangers. We don't really know who they are. But the projection makes it appear as this person is beautiful, wise, loving. They're going to fulfill all my dreams, essentially.
And is it that then we start a narrative about that person and who they are and who we are, and kind of daydream into this like magical romantic fantasy that this person has? And I remember when I was single, I would tell my friends, when I go on a date, I would say, I'm looking for that flirty feeling, flirty, where I feel like, the
Yeah.
nerves and the excitement. And if it's flat, no. And then if I got the flirtiness, I was like, yes. But what happened was, over years of doing this, that was not a really good measure, because the people I felt flirty with were psychologically leading me into my same pattern. And so I think one of my biggest contributions to being a really relationships and love coaching is that the flirty is not an indicator of love. It's your unconscious psychological triggers coming up. It's like a trigger that is bringing up old stuff that it's different for everyone,
Yeah.
but it typically is leading you to the same old pattern.
Yeah. What
You're
people
getting
call,
excited because it's familiar and it's good, but maybe it's familiar because it's the same pattern.
exactly. What people call chemistry is often
Hmm.
associated with the familial patterns that were played out with parents and in the home situation that kind of resonate with you with this other person. They trigger a lot of the same things because it, this is a little bit more kind of depth psychology, but we read each other's unconscious mind. So a lot of people
Hmm.
don't understand this. They think we're just going off the visual, physical cues, but our minds are much more powerful than that. We pick up on the individual's unconscious shadow, unconscious anima, animus projection onto us and back and forth, and that's what creates the psychological bonding, that there's a match here. We feel connected at the emotional, psychological, deeper level than just the physical attraction.
I always say we fit together like puzzle pieces, unconsciously, not unconscious level. And for me, what I've over the years working with lots of single women and some men, is that on a surface, they see this person and they think they want a relationship. They're very open and they're like love bombing them and they're happy. They want that connection, but then it fizzles out really quickly, or they run as soon as things get close. And I think it's because we mistake like that how they're acting on a conscious level, but unconsciously we're drawn to them because they are where they're capable of opening up and level of intimacy they're capable of will match ours. So for me and for many of my clients, they didn't realize how fearful they were of true intimacy and true love because on the surface they were
Mm.
consciously wanting it. And there's a lot of people in the world, I would say most people in the world are wanting that great love, but fear it at the same time. So you're going to be attracted to someone who is as open as you are. And most people are not conscious of how open they are or not open they are to love. And so
Yeah.
that's why my book, Let Love In, was about letting it in. And most people don't let it in because it's terrifying to have someone be in our life in a very intimate way. And it sounds great when we're having champagne celebrations on a sunset cruise through Italy and, going on these adventures and the picnics in the park and walking hand in hand. But when it talks about like deep feelings, most people are really terrified of that. We had a guy at one of our events. I don't know if you remember him. He was like 6'7", big guy, super handsome. He was a Marine, and he said, I have more courage jumping into enemy territory than having an intimate relationship or a conversation with a woman. It terrifies me. I'd rather do that. And so it's really interesting. It's something that no one talks about. We all want it, but we're afraid of it at the same time. And that's that psychological, like you said, that unconscious will be drawn to those people.
Yeah. So if you're afraid of intimacy,
Mhm.
for example, you'll tend to choose unconsciously to gravitate towards people that are emotionally unavailable. Why? Because you're safe. They're not going to pursue the relationship. Essentially, they're on their way out as well. They're simply going to, kind of be there superficially and then exit the stage, and therefore you're safe. But you think it's them, it's not me. They're the ones that are emotionally unavailable. Yes, but you chose them
Mhm.
unconsciously. You chose them. That is tricky, right? Because people think I'm doing what is expected of
I'm
me.
committed. I want to open up, and it's subtle because in the beginning of a relationship when two people meet, it's very fun. It's very light. It's a lot of like the lower love, like the physical, the sex, chemicals flowing through the brain, and it's easy to be in that state, but it's like I always call it the 90-day trial period expires, and all of a sudden it's like, where is this going? Do I want kids? Can this person provide, like the more deep questions of a long-term relationship? And a lot of people like the fun beginning, but the serious, and where they have to basically have responsibility for this other person, and what's involved in that, if they have kids or things happening in their life, a sick parent and their job and their stresses, that becomes more difficult for people. And then even just sharing how you feel. I know so many people that have been married for a long time and they don't even share with their husband how they feel. And the husband doesn't
Mhm.
share either. And then it becomes this kind of two separate people just living as roommates. And it's either they break up or they just kind of stay in this kind of unexciting, unfulfilled bond or
Yeah.
partnership that doesn't go anywhere. So we want to say that the psychological element, if we get that right, the physical and the neuro transmitters going off, the hormones, those will all happen too. But if you get that psychological piece in place, that really will help you match with the person that you are meant to be with and that you really want in your life on a conscious level.
Yeah, because that's more the long-term commitment.
Hmm.
It has to happen psychologically. You can't just stay at the physical level. That will wear out very quickly.
And to think about it, like if you're going to be with someone on a long term basis, you will evolve, you will change. So, who they are when you meet, they need to grow with you. And I've seen a lot of people are in relationships and they start doing personal growth and they sort of outgrow their partner. They're kind of learning about themselves, but the partner's the same person that they met, 5 years ago or 3 years ago, and they're a different person now. And so that bond starts to break apart subtly. There's less in common. There's less intimacy or connection, and
Yeah.
so you want to. Both people need to be in that evolution of growth and psychological understanding of who they are and what's happening. on the unconscious level.
Yeah, and so luckily for us, Jung left us a psychology that addresses the internal changes that have to happen in order for you to open your heart in the true sense of the word, that you're not defending yourself. You're not choosing people that are going to reject you unconsciously. So it begins by being self aware. What are my patterns? What are the patterns that I inherited from my family? What are those kind of relational patterns? If your parents were divorced, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a tendency to get divorced, but the statistics kind of show that there is something to that, right? That these are patterns that are handed down. And so you begin by taking stock of that history. What were the messages that you received about how relationships work, what you can expect from your partner? All that is stored unconsciously in our mind. And we're not even aware of it. We think, no, I'm ready to start a family and get into a serious relationship, but I haven't done any inner work. Then it's going to play out. Those patterns are going to play out without me realizing what is happening. It's going to appear to come from the other partner.
So with the parents and this idea that the fear of intimacy, like why would someone fear that bond and that connection? But what you, to your point about looking at your parents and the dynamics between your parents, and I think an important thing to look at is who had the power. Because a lot of men, I've worked with, their mother had the power, and they didn't want to be that submissive father. You know, like they didn't. It's in their mind unconsciously. They think, if I get into a relationship, the woman's going to control me. And then the same thing with women. A lot of times I see the man be in control, and the woman wants her independence and doesn't want. And so it's not just about the fear of intimacy, like getting your heart broken, which is part of it, but it's also like, what kind of dynamic am I stepping into in that pattern I saw that doesn't feel aligned? Now, unconsciously, people will fall into those patterns. They will go and find the partner and be the submissive one, just like their dad was, if they're a guy or the girl, and they think that's just the way it is, and they don't even question it, and they can fall into those patterns. But I think a lot of people that do personal growth have already awakened and already like thinking about things differently than someone who hasn't done any personal growth. So they're kind of resistant to that. And so here's the good news, I think personally, because I didn't meet you till I was 41, is that if it's taking a long time, it's probably because you're more conscious and you're more, you know, you want the best and you're not settling like a lot of people that get married and, you know, really young, and they just, you know, kind of fall into the patterns that their family told them to. And they think, you know, they call it love. There's nothing wrong with that if that makes them happy. But I think when we're in a personal growth kind of path, we have higher like not higher standards is not correct to say. I don't want to say like people that don't do personal have lower standards, but it's more like we want more of life in a way. Like we're seeking deeper answers or deeper, even deeper connections in a relationship, like
Yeah,
a higher bar we want to reach in love, which, you know, the bar I keep you up, Rob.
I know.
But it's worth the wait. It's worth the work, and it's worth the wait to get something really, truly unique and beautiful. And we haven't even talked about the spiritual part yet.
That's right. The spiritual part, then, it kind of grows out of the psychological part, because what inner work does, it connects you to your anima or animus, as Jung says. So the anima, we can say, is the soul, and the animus is the spirit within you. Both, we need both. We need a balance of that spirit of going out there and finding our mate and creating a family, buying homes, and all this stuff that we need to do as human beings. But the soul grounds us in that love for ourselves, for our life, and for another individual that we want to share with. Instead of thinking of love as this person is going to fulfill me and make me happy, it's more of I'm already happy, I'm already fulfilled. I want to share this fulfillment and this love with this other individual.
So what you're talking about is the spiritual love, the soulful love is what some people call agape.
Couldn't be, or that's a big part of it, right? That it transcends the relationship.
Mm.
It's about opening yourself up to what is the function of love in my life. It's a
Mm.
spiritual principle that we see. I mean, what are the marriage vows about? It's saying as above, so below. whatever's joined on earth, let it be joined in heaven or something like that, right? Which is, it's talking about this love being transcendent, and it's being dedicated to the whole, to humanity, not just to the family unit.
And so when we think about the cause of love, the root of love, when we go down to like the neuroscience and the physical, that's just an effect. The cause really is the spiritual, like this desire for union of ourselves. And a romantic relationship is a reflection or a mirror of our own self that we're trying to make complete. And so from a spiritual perspective, how do we have to look at the psychological and then the physical, but all those, like that beautiful feeling we feel, the real true pureness of it comes from a divine soulful feeling, something not human, not by our ego. And so when we fall in love, even if you haven't done any personal development work and or you know someone who has that initial feeling, it tracks as transmitters and emotional triggers and all those things, but we're really seeing the divine in ourselves and the other person. It's a really beautiful state that everyone has access to, except we misinterpret it. And I think a lot of people misinterpret that feeling of seeing the divine presence in another person as they're separate from them, that they can't see in themselves. If they can recognize that, then they can really start to feel like, I have that in me too. And then the longing goes away. But the longing is not for that person, but the longing is for our own soul, our own divinity, our own divine nature.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people misunderstand that it's not replacing, let's say, that divine element with and getting rid of everything else. It's adding to it so that there is the physical connection and the biological kind of exhilaration of
The flirtiness.
of attraction and bonding, and that there's also the psychological connection to this individual. Um, that enriches the depth of the relationship, that you can have great conversations with your partner that you can't have with anybody else because they know you as a soul, not just as the persona, as Jung would say. And then
When I
there's
was go ahead.
the spiritual connection, which is transcendence.
And we want that. That's the highest form of love that we want. And I believe that most people want it or think, have a desire for it, but they don't think it's possible. And so they settle, so they don't want to be alone, or they convince themselves this is good enough. And, I always wanted, this dream relationship, but it was less the fantasy, but more the depth that I wanted. But I had to carve out myself and find the depth within myself first before I was able to allow someone and go on that journey. So if you're like on the surface and digging a little shallow hole, that's the kind of as deep as your relationship will go. And so the deeper you can go within yourself without fear and courage to face parts of yourself that you judge and you have complete with that, you're going to be more open because you're not hiding anything. You're not worried about they're going to find out about you or judge you because it's really your own judgment that you see in them. And so seeing the other person as a mirror to where you are in your own personal growth is a powerful kind of concept to think about.
Yeah, and ultimately, it's a calling.
Mm.
When we're ready to really open our hearts up to another human being, it's a calling to transcend our limited ego self. That it's not about you anymore. It's about the world, right? It's about another person. It's about children and society. And what's your contribution to all this? It's a maturation process that is, I would say, falling apart these days, but it's lacking, let's say, in emphasis and support. There's not enough support and emphasis on that structure for human beings to be able to do these things. In other words, in culture, it was usually part of the culture that gave people a ramp onto this process, whether it was through the church or through the schools or through ritual. Somehow people were initiated naturally into this process. Now a lot of that is gone. And so people are lost. They feel like, where am I going to find that? And they're
I keep
looking for
looking
it.
out there for,
Yeah.
I said I was always looking for the light at the end of the tunnel. And then I realized I was the light.
Yeah.
And that's it's like the person I found was me. And so it's, yeah, I think it's coming to terms with you feeling like whole seems so cliche, but it's really that wholeness, not from a conscious level. And most people don't understand the unconscious and how powerful it is, that we're like this little bubble on the top of the ocean. This huge unconscious is like driving a lot of our decisions, and we're trying to make practical, rational decisions on who we pick and what they do for a living and how I feel around them. Do we have the same like the same activities? Are we the same political party? That now that's like a big thing. Or do you look good on paper? And even like when I first started doing personal growth, that whole like programming, like belief system, like I believe I'm lovable, I believe I'm good enough, building up your confidence. That's not really what we're talking about when we talk about the unconscious. We're talking about like forces within us that are more complex forces within us that are available to us that can change our life and make us feel like a part of something bigger. So when we bring a person into our life, we don't feel like they're filling up anything. We feel like, wow, we can go on this journey together. Look at how vast. I'm so interesting already. and let me, have someone who's just as deep and interesting to explore life together. I think that's a beautiful relationship
Yeah.
and lasting because you never get bored.
Yeah, we're entering to the realm of the gods when we're talking
Yes.
about love, and
Yeah.
so there's a lot of deeper dynamics that often are missed in just thinking about relationships on the surface.
Well, I love this topic, as you know, my favorite topic of all time. But I do want to invite everyone to check out the show notes. So I'll have some links there for you, some resources to check out. Also, if you're interested in coaching other people in love through this deeper process and relationships, check out our Jungian life coach training. We have another cohort starting in September and we're almost full. So we wanted to make sure if you're interested in getting started, it's a 9-month program and you learn shadow work, depth work, anima animus, all the things we talked about today, the collective unconscious, and really help people in a deep way to find that relationship they want or anything they want in life. So next week, we're going to be talking about your favorite topic, Rob.
Happiness, joy.
Happiness and joy. So we're
It's,
lightening it up. No more dark emotions. We're going to end with a lightness to our series on emotions. So take care, everyone. Have a great day and check out the deep love within you. It's already there.
see you soon.